Okay, I think we'll get this started. I'm going to spotlight Callan to introduce this for us. And Callan, you are on.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I just want to welcome everyone to the final talk in this series and share a thanks to everyone for joining and for their participation on Zoom here over the last few weeks. All of your attendance and excellent questions have been very appreciated, and we really look forward to launching our website within the next month or two. So please stay tuned because that's where you'll be able to learn more about everything that we're up to. And we'd also like to share that Freedom of Mind will be hosting 3 online retreats with Delson coming this fall. Signups aren't currently available quite yet, but just so that you can mark your calendars, the tentative dates will be September 13th to the 21st, October 11th to the 19th, and November 8th to the 16th. Each one will have about 15 slots, and there will be daily interviews with Delson, as well as recorded talks that all the participants can watch at their own convenience as they make their way through the retreat. And we'll send out emails a few months in advance with more details and sign up info. And lastly, we just want to thank everyone again for coming, and we really look forward to staying in touch with everybody.
Okay, thank you, Callan. So today's topic is forgiveness, and I'll invite Delson on to get it started.
So forgiveness. This is the as David was saying earlier, sometimes the dreaded word amongst the community. Every time somebody prescribes forgiveness, it's like, oh no, I've done something wrong. I'm not progressing. But no, there's a saying in Star Wars. I love Star Wars. So one of the sayings is by Darth Vader. He says, "Do not underestimate the power of the dark side." Not that forgiveness is the dark side, but I would say, do not underestimate the power of forgiveness, right? Because it is very powerful. Bhante Vimaramsi, when he introduced this practice, he himself was doing this for about 2 years. And when I met him the first time, well, I'd say the second time, in Dhamma Sukha, he recommended this book to me, which is a book by Stephen Levine. It's called Who Dies? I have it over here. This is the copy I got from him. And he had me read it to get a better understanding of this whole process as well. And if you actually go to that book, I won't read it, but I'll let you know what page it is on. It's on page 81 to 83. It talks about forgiveness. It talks about self-forgiveness and forgiving others. And so this is really the beginnings of how the Bhante developed this. And he spent some time, if I'm not mistaken, in Hawaii for a couple of years practicing this forgiveness practice. When I was there at Dhammasukha, and Venerable Mettananda was there as well, every morning, Bhante and Venerable Mettananda would go through a exchange of forgiveness. And this is actually common within the Bhikkhu Sangha, the Bhikkhu and Bhikkhuni Sangha, where on every full moon night or on every Uposatha day, what they will do is they will confess any, misdemeanors, any mistakes, any things that they might have done to cause harm intentionally. And they ask for forgiveness. And then it's as easy as the elders, if I'm not mistaken, if I remember this correctly, saying that to very good friend, please do not do that again, friend. And then that's what Bhante and Venerable Mettananda would do. Right? Venerable Mettananda would be there for Bhante to tell him, and then Bhante would be there for Venerable Mettananda to tell him. So this forgiveness practice seems very simplistic. Yeah, and we know that there are, let's say, multiple subtler versions of it, depending on when you joined this practice and how you understand it. I would say don't get too hung up on the technique. Don't get too hung up on how to do it so much, because the most recent one that Bhante had introduced was just forgive and relax. So you would, the way I came across it was you use certain statements. You say, I forgive myself for not understanding. This is a very important thing to remember when we say not understanding. Not understanding. Not understanding means being in ignorance, right? Because ignorance is not understanding the Four Noble Truths. Ignorance is a lack of mindfulness. And so when we say not understanding, we're saying that we have not understood the Four Noble Truths in that moment. This is one of the deepest layers of understanding this statement. I forgive myself for not understanding. And this is a statement you would repeat in your mind a few times, not like a mantra, but you would just say it a few times in your mind, and then you would just relax and wait and see what comes up. And it might take some time, and that's okay, but you're just there, available to the moment, available to whatever is arising. And whatever will arise then will be something that's like either something you did, something you said, something you feel bad about, some remorse, some regret coming up. And it's important not to relive the emotions of whatever happened. Yeah, it's okay. I mean, it happens. If you relive the emotion, you experience remorse, you experience regret, all of these things. Actually, the fact that you do experience remorse, the fact that you do experience regret, it's indicative of the fact that you do have empathy, right? So that's a step in the right direction. So anyway, so if you recognize something that feels off, that you did something that makes you feel regretful, you would just, again, say, I forgive myself for not understanding, or I forgive myself for hurting this person, or I forgive myself for indulging in this, whatever it was that arose in the mind. And the key there is that the forgiveness practice starts to release energetic blocks, right? So the reason why we're giving the forgiveness practice is because somebody is not able to naturally feel loving kindness for themselves. In the interviews, the very first thing I ask people, if they have problems with the practice, is, do you feel like you deserve to be happy? And this is just the truth of the situation. A lot of people will say, no, I don't deserve to be happy. I don't think I deserve to be happy. And in that case, then I will tell them, I think you should do some forgiveness practice, because forgiveness is all about self-acceptance first, and acceptance of whatever has arisen in terms of somebody saying something to you, or somebody doing something to you. So you will, in this practice, say, I forgive myself for not understanding. Something comes up, you allow it to be there, you forgive yourself, you accept it, and you drop it. And it drops away. And how you know it drops away is that the emotional rawness of that experience that causes you mental suffering goes away. It's not like the memory goes away, but the emotional core of the memory is changed. It's replaced by a level of acceptance and equanimity. So if you go back to the experience and there was guilt before, now you realize, okay, that was a mistake. I've learned from that mistake and I have moved on. I can still remember that experience where I harmed this person in mind, body, or speech, but I have accepted it and I have decided to not repeat that offense again. And so I am leaving it be. That's what the finality of this practice is for yourself. Now, eventually somebody will come up, or you might say, I forgive you for not understanding. And you might say that a few times and you wait. And what will happen is somebody will come up. A situation will come up. an experience, a memory of where this person hurt you in mind, body, or speech. This person said something untoward. They were not understanding. They came from a level of ignorance, and they didn't understand in that moment that they themselves were suffering. And it was because they themselves were suffering that they were trying to inflict suffering on you. This is the ultimate understanding that you get. And so one of the fruits of the forgiveness practice is natural compassion for the other person. Now, a lot of people will say, well, does that mean that we have to then interact with that person? Does that mean we have to forgive them and talk to them? And, do we have to be all nice to them and all of these things? No. There's that statement, forgive and forget. I think we should understand when we say forgive, we're just saying that we are forgiving that person because we want peace of mind. Everything that we do in this practice, whether it's forgiveness, whether it's metta, whether it's compassion, sending compassion to others, ultimately it's for the benefit of our mind. It's for our peace of mind. It's for our freedom of mind. It's for our ability to be okay with the reality of every given moment. So when we forgive the other person, what we're saying is, I understand that in that moment you were ignorant. I understand in that moment you didn't know what you were saying, in the sense that if you did know any better, chances are you would have behaved better. So I'm choosing to let go. I'm choosing to let bygones be bygones. But I don't have to interact with you. I don't have to, always put a smile on my face in front of you. If I can avoid you for the peace of my mind, not that I'm avoiding you out of aversion, but for my peace and your peace, I'm just letting you go and I'm not going to interact with you. That's okay. So forgiving means being okay with what that person did, but not having to forget. Yeah, what that means is you don't have to interact with them. If you know that this person might be incorrigible, or that person is still having some resentment towards you, if it was a mutually destructive relationship in that sense, then you don't need to be there to bring that up, to aggravate that again. And then the last part of that practice is where you are standing there, so to speak, when you're in your mind, and you see the other person looking back at you, and you receive forgiveness from them. Now, this doesn't have to happen all the time. It can happen, and it has happened for some people, but it is something that helps to release further blockages, where you see the other person genuinely looking at you and saying, I forgive you. I forgive you for not understanding. I am moving on. And that might help you to let go of situations where perhaps you can't communicate with that person, either because they're gone or they're living in another country. Maybe they blocked you or you've blocked them or whatever it is. But ultimately, it helps you bring a better understanding of the situation, and it helps you have peace of mind. Because ultimately, that is the goal of the Dhamma, right? It's to have peace of mind in every moment so that you can see things as they actually are. What does it mean to see things as they actually are? It means that I am not projecting my biases onto the situation. I am not proliferating with all kinds of concepts and ideas and preconceived notions. Every moment is fresh in my mind. Every moment is fresh to me. Every person that I meet, even if I've had a relationship with them for 50 years, I don't have any projection of this is who they are. I don't plant into them some kind of an identity. I don't have any expectations. This is a obviously an ideal level of understanding the Dhamma, but the forgiveness practice is a very important stepping stone towards that, if you're not able to progress further in your practice. Sometimes what will happen is somebody is in the 8th jhana. Somebody is experiencing neither perception nor non-perception, but there is something that is always coming up in the form of formations, in the form of these proto-thoughts. And it's like they can't progress any further. It's like they've hit a wall. And it could be because they don't have enough disenchantment. It could be because they have too many expectations, too much desire, that is to say, too much craving for nibbana. And what I will recommend to them is, okay, just let that go and do a little bit of forgiveness, maybe for half a day. Just do some forgiveness. And when they do this, right, they'll come back to another interview and say, I've done this, I feel much better. I'll go back to, the 8th jhana practice. I'll go back to quiet mind. And what they'll find is that they're at a much deeper level now. Now their mind is much quieter. So forgiveness will always be needed until you become fully awakened, because forgiveness is basically a tool in your toolkit on the way to final awakening. For somebody who is fully awakened, what is there to forgive? Forgive on what account? Right? There is no more identity. There is no more taking things personally. There's no more defending this way or that way. There's just whatever is happening in this moment. That is the perfection of the Dhamma. Being able to allow things to be as they are, allow things to unfold as they would. So forgiveness is a preview of that. It helps you to see that. Now, sometimes what happens is people become, for lack of a better word, addicted. Just as you can be addicted to or obsessed with going into jhana. The first time, maybe the first couple of times when people do the forgiveness practice, they experience a great deal of catharsis. And I even warn people, when you do forgiveness practice, you are going to cry. Whether you want it or not, whether you like it or not, you are going to cry. Because it unleashes very gently. It brings to the forefront all of the subconscious pains, all of the different, blocks that the mind is holding on to. And it's released in the form of crying. It's released in the form of tears. And tears are a good thing in this practice. It signifies that you are ready to let go, that indeed you are letting go. So that's why I'll tell people, if you want to do the practice, you can do it in your cabin or whatever it is, and do it privately. If you feel like you're going to disturb other people, problem. But I'll tell you what, when people do this and they come back, they feel so much relief. They'll come back the next day and you will see it on their face. They feel happy. They feel joyful. They feel a sense of renewal, a sense of revival. And then I'll know that they're ready for loving kindness again. And I'll ask them, do you feel like you want to continue with forgiveness, or do you feel like you're ready for loving kindness? And in that moment, they'll say, I feel like I'm ready to go back to loving kindness. And because they've released all of this gunk, all of this emotional turmoil that was plaguing them, the joy that arises in the form of piti becomes like a fountain. Yeah, and it's like an unquenchable, so to speak, fountain that keeps coming out. It keeps giving you joy. And so now you start to experience the first jhana and the second jhana, and then you continue progressing as you would. Sometimes, as I was just saying earlier, people will get addicted to that, though, because they will feel that joy, and then they'll continue, and they'll feel like, oh, the joy is diminished, and now nothing's going on. Well, your mindfulness is sharper. You're experiencing more equanimity, so chances are you're getting to the third and fourth jhana. And then they'll come to a different retreat and they say, I think I need forgiveness. And I'll say, okay, go ahead, do forgiveness. If you feel like you need it, spend the first 2 days doing it. And they'll do it. And they'll be like, nothing's coming up. I want that release experience again. They become addicted to that. They're like, I want to feel that catharsis again. That's actually an improper understanding of forgiveness. Forgiveness is not about you having to chase the experience of release. It's you being open to release. It's you being available to disturbing emotions and being okay with them. And then whatever comes up in the way of that release, as crying or whatever, it comes about naturally. This is what I want you guys to know. Whether it's forgiveness, whether it's practicing metta, whether it's quiet mind, whether it's trying to understand each of the jhanas and so on, stop trying to make it an exercise. Stop trying to make it something where you want something out of it. When you become outcome driven and you become obsessed by it, then you're completely misunderstanding the situation. You're not understanding the significance of what this is. The beauty and the magic of that release that arose, the beauty and magic of the jhanas that might have arisen when you're doing a regular practice, is because you have no expectations. So when you had that experience the first time around, it was because you didn't know what to expect. And secondly, it was because you were genuinely open to the moment. You weren't waiting for something to happen. So if you want to experience release from forgiveness and you feel like you need forgiveness, do it. But don't be obsessed by the outcome. Like, it needs to be done this way. It has to be this way. This has to, this should, this must. This is what's known as masturbation. Yeah. This is a term coined by Albert Ellis, who was the father of rational emotive therapy. And he talked about this. People have a problem with how things are going in their emotional life, and people have a problem with the way people are interacting with them, and they have a problem with the outside world. It's this non-acceptance that these blockages. And they come in the form of these words in your mind. Yeah, which is like, I must do this. I have to do this. I should do this. This is just another kind of craving. It's a craving for existence. It's a craving for a certain kind of identity. It's an expectation that you put on yourself, and it's unfair for you. It's unfair for other people, and it's unfair for the world at large, because it's unbeneficial for you and it's unbeneficial for others. This is the way you know if something is wholesome or not wholesome. If it is wholesome, it's something that's beneficial for you and it's beneficial for others. And the beauty of forgiveness is that it transcends any specific tradition. You will find forgiveness in all traditions, one way or the other. It has great psychological significance, great psychological relief for those. And people don't even need to follow anything in order to experience the benefits of forgiveness. You don't have to be a Buddhist, you don't have to be a Christian, you don't have to be, Hindu, Muslim, whatever it is, doesn't matter. Forgiveness transcends all of that. And the other thing I'll say is forgiveness also stops karma. Now, what I mean by that is not that it somehow burns your karma, that it somehow takes all of the karmic residue and it just does away with it. No, it allows you to bring in some level of insight that sheds light on the situation so that you don't react in the same way again causing that same karmic output. I mean, this is the way the world is. This is the way samsara is. But can you just imagine if world leaders had this understanding of forgiveness? Unfortunately, in the world that we live in, that is just the nature of samsara. People use forgiveness as lip service. Oh yeah, I forgive him, or I forgive them, or let's not forget the power of forgiveness. And what do you know next? This world leader or that world leader stabs this person in the back, stabs that person in the back, does this, does that. All of these other things. We can't control that. But if on an individual level, people understood this, things would change. Things would really, really change. One of the biggest proponents of forgiveness was Jesus Christ. He talked about forgiveness more than anything else when you read the New Testament. Right? Somebody asked him, how many times should we forgive the same offense that somebody does? 7 times? How many times? And he says 70 times 70, or 70 times 7. That's how many times you should forgive. Obviously, he was being a little, cheeky, because what he's saying is just keep forgiving. Just let it be. Let it go. Right? He was one of the best examples of forgiveness, being a personification, let's say, of forgiveness. According to the Bible, right up until the moment of his death, he said, forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do. Right? What does that mean? He says, I forgive them for not understanding. They don't know what they're doing, so I'm choosing to forgive them. Now, we can't all be as great as Jesus or Buddha, but we can aspire towards that. And for our own benefit of personal relief and release, we can do it. Now, sometimes what will happen is, the pent-up emotions that are present in, your energy system, as it were, can manifest as pains in the body. And sometimes what I'll recommend to people is you go to that pain, if it arises, and you say in your mind, I forgive this pain for being there. And you say that a few times and you wait, and you will notice that that pain starts to unravel itself energetically. And what arises is this emotional memory. It might be something you said, something somebody else said. It could be some kind of trauma that was inflicted upon you, or whatever it is. And now what you do is you deal with it in the same way you would with the regular forgiveness practice. You say, I forgive myself for not understanding, and you experience that. You let it go. You accept it. Or you see somebody else doing something to you, and it has created this resentment, which has now manifested as this pain in the body. And so you take that resentment towards the person and you forgive them. You say, I accept what has happened. I forgive you. I'm choosing to let this go. And bit by bit, what you will see is, because of those momentary experiences of relief, that you experience less pain in the body. That particular pain starts to diminish. It starts to dissipate. So this can happen, and so we always have to come with an attitude of forgiveness in this practice. Whether you're doing forgiveness or not, whether you're doing metta, compassion, whatever it is you're doing, always come with that attitude of forgiveness, which ultimately means, okay, I'm allowing things to be as they are. I'm accepting whatever is going on. Because in my introductory talks, when I give to people on retreat, well, the thing I say to them is, there's 2 things that people have to deal with. Oh, here are the balloons. I don't know if anybody else can see the balloons, but in any case, these situations arise where a person will say, I can't feel the joy. I don't feel like I deserve to feel the joy. I've already explained that part. The second is they're trying too hard. That's another side of the same coin. That's basically saying I'm choosing to push against the flow of reality. And I'm choosing not to accept that this is not happening right now. I'm going to push myself into a jhana. And that's the wrong way to do it. All you're going to do is cause yourself more pain. For a moment or maybe a few moments of extreme joy, you're going to push too hard, and that can create problems. It can cause pain in the head, pain in the body. It can cause headaches. It can cause, different kinds of energetic issues. So I urge all of you, do not push hard. Do not try so hard. And if you find yourself doing this over and over, what do? You forgive yourself for it. You say, okay, I forgive myself for pushing so hard. I'm going to let that go. I'm going to take it easy. And so sometimes what Bhante would do, and sometimes what I will do, is I will tell the person, I want you to go, usually when they're at the retreat center at Dhamma Sukha in Missouri, I'll say, I want you to go for a walk. If it's too hot, I want you to find David or Kirsten and have them take you to the lake and spend some time at the lake and just relax. Enjoy yourself. Don't do any practice. Don't think about metta. Anything. And what happens is, because they're no longer caught up in the head of all of these thoughts, and I got to do this, I have to do this, I must do this, I should do this, they are able to just live in the moment. Yeah, they find themselves enjoying seeing the lake, enjoying seeing the birds, listening to the birds, enjoying the breeze, just experiencing nature. And that in itself is the meditation. That in itself is understanding that the meditation is all about being here right now. That is the beginning of mindfulness, and the fruition of that is a mind that is collected, not concentrated, not pushing, not trying too hard. So, going back to this, forgiveness allows you to release those expectations that you put upon yourself. Now, you could go to a therapist. You can psychoanalyze all you want. Why do I feel this? Was it because I wasn't, told I love you enough times? It was because, my father did this, my mother did this, whatever it is. But we're not here to find out the why. We're not here to figure out why this happens. We're trying to figure out how this arises in the moment and how we can stop reinforcing it, right, with our continual habitual tendencies. That is the wisdom aspect of this practice. We realize, okay, this is what we keep doing. Now there must be a different way. We let go of that and we replace it with something that is wholesome. So the forgiveness practice reconditions the behavioral patterns from being a resentful person, from being a person who feels constant guilt and as a result, a lot of anxiety and restlessness, to being a person that is accepting, to being a person that has some level of inner peace. And this is really the path of the Dhamma. Seeing what is unwholesome, seeing that which is not beneficial for you and for others, choosing to let it go, and replacing it with something that is wholesome. And the wholesome will always be greater, more beneficial than the unwholesome. So there's a wonderful saying by this scientist, by this thinker named R. Buckminster Fuller. And it's a great statement. He says, you don't change the existing reality by fighting it. Instead, you put a new model in its place so that the old one becomes obsolete. This is a very powerful statement. This is basically the Dhamma. You don't change the existing reality. What does that mean? You don't resist the Dhamma of this moment by pushing against it, by fighting against it. you replace whatever is arising in terms of your reactions and your responses to them with something else. And that only can happen when you have wisdom, when you have openness, when you have mindfulness, when you have the energy to use the 6 R's. But all of this can happen when you don't have these energetic blocks, these heavy sort of things that keep you, cloudy in your mind, that you're not able to experience what's going on. So forgiveness starts to clarify that path, starts to clear the way so that you can see what's actually going on, so that you don't have to take things personal. Really, I mean, all of the things that have been experienced, the past that we experience. I was recently in the mountains, and I had a great discussion with some of my friends that I had met. And one of this person was a beginner to the meditation practice. And he said, how do I let go of all of these past resentments and all these past hurts? I mean, later on, I did prescribe him the forgiveness practice, but from an understanding on the level of mind, I said, if you think about it, if you truly think about it, the past as it is doesn't exist in reality. It only exists in your mind. And it only persists because of your attention to it. But the only reality that we can experience is right here, right now. Even being right here, right now, is still about maybe, a fifth of a second or a tenth of a second, whatever, half a second in the past. You can't truly be here in the now, because whatever you're experiencing is the feedback, is a reflection of whatever your senses are picking up, and whatever your mind is interpreting. So that can help a person understand that I don't have to cling to the past. It only exists so long as I choose to hold on to it. But as soon as I let it go, I'm no longer living in the past. And because I'm no longer living in the past, I don't have expectations that the future will be the same as the past. Because if you're truly here in the present, then you don't even care about the future. It doesn't matter to you what happens in the future. Not because you have some kind of craving for non-existence. It's just because you're so content in the present moment, as it were. You're so happy and fulfilled right here, right now, that whatever happens is just a natural unfolding of the Dhamma. And so that future, being unconditioned, or rather no longer conditioned by expectations rooted in past resentments, past hurts, past experiences in general, is limitless. Anything can happen, but it doesn't tie you down with karma. These are the different kinds of insights that will come to you as an experience when you get deeper into forgiveness. You start to realize the value of being here. You start to realize, very bluntly speaking, the waste of time, so to speak, in continually reliving your past. You're wasting the opportunity to be in the present moment by utilizing it for reliving in the past. If that's happening, forgive yourself for that too. No big deal. It happens. The mind is a crazy machine. We have to accept that. And we just let it go. Now, I was talking to David offline about this, but at some point, somewhere, depends on the situation and if it makes sense, I will be introducing another variation of the forgiveness practice, as if we don't have enough variations, right? But in any case, I'll put it out there, and if you're interested, you can check it out. There are a couple of people beta testing it, as it were, and I'll have to get their approval before it's out there. It needs to have the TWIM stamp of approval before it can get out there. So suffice it to say, though, it really helps with the energetics of the body. It really helps, like purge a lot of stuff.
Hey, Delson, could you just go through the instructions really quickly one more time? Just
Yeah,
kind of once we've
yeah.
talked about it.
So the practice is very simple. You sit down in a very comfortable position, whether it's in the chair or on a cushion or whatever. Close your eyes and you relax for a bit. And the way I remember it, as far as my version of it from understanding it from Bhante's videos, has been that you start off with a statement: I forgive myself for not understanding. And you say that a few times, not like a mantra, maybe 4 or 5, half a dozen times. And then you just wait and see what happens. Something might come up. Some resentment might come up. Some guilt might come up. Some remorse might come up. Some memory might come up. Situation that you were involved will come up. And all you do there is, again, you say that statement in your mind. I forgive myself for not understanding. Sometimes people want to say, I forgive myself for having caused pain to this person, or I forgive myself for having caused pain to myself, or for not realizing, or whatever it is. But, try to stick to the original. I mean, that's always pretty much overarching for all experiences. So you start with that, and you will feel a catharsis. You will feel something coming up. You will feel tears welling up. And if they come, they come. Allow them to be there. Now, after you let go of that, perhaps there's a person that has hurt you, has said something to you, has done something to you, has created a situation for you where it was unpleasant for you. It was painful for you. It was harmful for you. And you have that person. You don't bring them up. You would just say, I forgive you for not understanding. And that person will come up, whoever it is. Sometimes you don't even have to say the statement. After you go through that, somebody will automatically come up. And when they do, then you say, I forgive you for not understanding. You might say that a few times, and you will feel resentment coming up, maybe. You'll say, I forgive this resentment for being here. And I forgive you for understanding. And eventually, it might take time. That's okay. But eventually, you accept what has happened, and you realize, as Umberto rightly said, that it had nothing to do with you. It was all about that person's habitual tendency. And so you accept that that was the case, and you let go of any resentment. The third part of that can happen, not all the time, but it can happen, is that person might look at you in your mind. They might look at you and say to you, I forgive you, or I forgive you for not understanding. You might hear that in your mind, and you receive that and you accept it. And that kind of closes the circle. Now, this practice, you don't have to do more than 30 minutes. 25 minutes is pretty much good. The other thing is the forgiveness walking practice is pretty straightforward. It's like a march that you do. It's like so this is the right step, left step, right step, left step. I forgive you, you forgive me. Right? So you say that, and it doesn't have to be longer than 15 or 20 minutes. And you do that, take a break. When you're ready to go back and sit, you do the same process. And you do that until the emotional quality of whatever that experience, whatever that emotion, the memory was, whatever that situation was, starts to dissipate. So that when that memory does come up, it doesn't have any emotional value to it. It's not like you don't feel anything. It's rather you just have acceptance and equanimity towards it. So the memory will still arise, but there won't be any clinging going on, no identification with it going on. That's how you know that you're ready to move on. And secondly, there will be an energetic shift in your body and in your mind. You will notice that there is a wellspring of joy that naturally arises. And that is a sure sign that you're ready to move on for the time being and continue with the regular practice.
Okay, thank you. Could you just clarify, this is a big question, is like, what is it that you're not understanding, and why don't you fill in the rest of that statement? I forgive myself for not understanding, but yet it's an open statement. Why is that?
Yeah, this is important. It should be an open statement because otherwise you're trying to control the situation. You're controlling the meditation. You're like, I specifically forgive myself for doing this. No, no, no. Now you're actually bargaining with what should be forgiven and what should not be forgiven. You're keeping it open-ended enough so that whatever is coming out from your subconscious is an uncontrolled, unconditioned, so to speak. Not to say that it's unconditioned. It means that it's not conditioned by your biases. It's just whatever will flow out, whatever will come up. So for you to try to direct the forgiveness towards something is actually you trying to control the situation. So keep it open-ended. Now, when that does arise, that some situation happened where you did not understand, and if it's specific, you can say in that moment, I forgive myself for not understanding this person's perspective, or I forgive myself for not understanding how I felt in that moment, for not accepting how I felt in that moment. Or I forgive you for not understanding how I was feeling in that moment, or what I was saying in that moment. But the thing that comes after the understanding doesn't really matter. It's all about letting go what does arise. You're not trying to analyze. You're not trying to come to a point where now you have all of the therapeutic benefits of psychoanalysis. No, it's all about an emotional release that happens. And an emotional release can only happen when you take away the thinking, controlling mind out of the situation.
Great, thanks. Okay, I think now we can take some questions or maybe some stories. And looks like Josh, you've got your hand raised. So go ahead and unmute and let's hear what you have to say.
Hi, thanks. First time here, I was late, other things. What I'm feeling into this is it works great, but at a certain point though, what's coming up for me around this is I forgive you for not understanding. Then it's slipping into, for me, I'm better than the other person. They're ignorant. There's ignorance here, which there is, and I'm better and more righteous than them. And so they're lacking understanding, or the reverse, inferiority conceit, where, oh, I'm ignorant, I didn't understand, which is, somewhat true, but feeling into, and of course I can forgive both of those things. But at a certain point, I'm feeling like it's more beneficial to not even that this is just a process. There's not me forgiving another person, or on a relative level, of course there is, but or vice versa. There's just this lack of wisdom that's involved in this. That had driven the behaviors, and so just a more general notion of okay, there was a lack of understanding and wisdom here that led to the choices that were made and things that happened. So I don't know. That's kind of how it's sitting. How would I, is that okay to say, or how would this be addressed if I'm being, if understand?
So, yeah, I get what you're saying. And what I would say is, if that's happening in that moment where you feel like, oh, there's an inferiority complex or there's a superiority complex, then just forgive that if that arises. Just say, okay, I feel a little superior here. I'm going to forgive myself for feeling that way right now. Because the idea is, you can try to use all of the theory of the Dhamma. You can try to use all of the understanding of the absolute, that this is an impersonal process and all of that. But none of that necessarily is going to make a meaningful, very frankly speaking, meaningful impact. Because the whole point of the forgiveness is because you took something personal to start off with. And so now, in order for you to come out of it, there is a give and take. There is an exchange of forgiveness for yourself and for the other person. Yes, in the absolute sense, it's all just karma. It's all just vibration. It's all just experience that's impersonal. But try telling that to your heart. Try telling that to your emotions.
Yeah, very good point. And the other thing I wanted to share real quick, I also heard about perceiving things in other people that will stir the heart, stir the chitta, that I could actually forgive something in myself that's even allowing that to happen to begin with, and allowing that perception of wrongness or something that's causing friction, that there's something, well, maybe not, but what would it hurt anyway to forgive something in me that's having that come to fruition to begin with. So
Absolutely.
interesting.
Absolutely. I mean, when in doubt, just keep forgiving.
Even like front-loading forgiveness, as long as it aligns with wise action, like, I already forgive you. You could do anything, right?
Yeah.
Or to a certain degree,
that's
that
fine.
you're already forgiven. It's presupposed, I could even almost get to that point.
Yeah, and that's actually touching upon compassion, because now you're recognizing, okay, the other person's suffering, so I don't need to add to their suffering, and I don't need to add to my suffering. Completely valid, completely fine.
Steve.
Thanks, David. So my question is around, how we use the 6R process basically at the level of experiencing craving and then clinging and becoming and so on. And then once we reach that birth of action, basically, the karmic waterfall, and we really don't have a lot of opportunities to recall the arrow shooting towards the target at that point. Just wondering if forgiveness practice provides another alternative, especially if we do that birth of action where we regret something, we react and lash out or whatever, and we're like, oh, now there we go. What's coming next? Just wondered your perspective on that.
Yeah, I mean, in the context of dependent origination, as you're saying, with the birth of action, what does the birth of action cause? It causes suffering, and that suffering can manifest in regret. That's one of the things we see in the whole mass of suffering, that grief, despair, and so on and so forth. So that in itself is a feeling that you're experiencing in that moment. And you allow that feeling to be there and say, okay, I see this now, and I choose not to repeat that same mistake, or I choose not to repeat the same offense. I forgive myself and I move on as best as I can. That's why I'm saying, and that's what I said earlier, which is that forgiveness is a great tool for releasing karma. Not in the sense that it somehow metaphysically burns karma, but in the sense that it brings you a level of understanding where you see that if I continue to behave in the same repeated habitual tendencies, it's only going to cause me more and more suffering. But if I choose to allow things to be as they are and I accept it, fine. In this moment, I slipped up. I said something I shouldn't have said. I did something I shouldn't have done. I slipped up. But the easier, or I should say the faster I'm able to recognize that, let that go. If I need to forgive myself, I forgive myself, forgive the other party, the easier it becomes to release that karma so that it doesn't happen again and again. And because you don't continue to dig into these channels of continual repeated behavior, they start to fade away, and they're replaced with deeper insight, deeper understanding, and ultimately more acceptance.
Okay, Jordan.
Delson, thank you again for doing this wonderful session. Forgiveness was a big piece in my practice, and really was the only way I could ever feel loving kindness, and then it just started pouring in. So it's like an unstoppable faucet of kindness and friendliness now. So yeah, we're so grateful for Bhante to doing this. But and I want to thank Colum and the Freedom of Mind organization for sponsoring this. Hey, thank you so much for doing this. And David.
Okay, Sam, you have your hand raised.
Yes, thank you. Can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. So thank you, Delson, for giving this talk. So I guess my question is, I have two questions, actually. The first question is about the context and the feeling of forgiveness. I was wondering if Delson could speak a little bit about that feeling of forgiveness and what that feels like versus loving kindness, and how you separate the two, and how you know that you're ready to switch back to loving kindness. And the second question was just a little, if you could talk a little bit about working in the context of therapy, if you have therapy or working through that in a secondary practice or with a professional, how you tie that into either forgiveness or loving kindness, and how the two can work together. Thank you.
Yeah, this is a good question because, we talk about forgiveness and people try to hone in on what that feeling of forgiveness is. I don't want to give too much into it because then people will try to look for it, but what I will say is, as a result of forgiving, what you experience is a lot of release and a lot of relief. So the idea is to come to terms with what was happening, whether it was something you did, something somebody else did, or something that just arose. And it's a level of acceptance. It's a level of dropping it. It's a level of letting go. It's a level of, seeing that your mind has clenched onto this for far too long. And then slowly, bit by bit, have a lot of patience. It might take time, but if you have patience, it will see itself out. Is bit by bit, it starts to loosen up. And bit by bit, you do feel certain energetic shifts. You feel like there's a level of clarity in your mind. You feel like your body is looser. It's no longer too stiff, too tight. And you feel relief. That's the big thing with this practice, whether it's TWIM in general or whether it's forgiveness, is you want to experience a level of relaxation, of letting go, of dropping, of relief. The second part is that, the thing about, therapy is it has its benefits in different ways. One of the, I quoted Albert Ellis, for example, and the reason I did that was because I studied him when I was 15 or 16, rational emotive therapy, and, related to that, cognitive behavioral therapy. And, what I found is, especially cognitive behavioral therapy, it has these things called cognitive distortions. And in some sense, they can be likened to unwholesome states of mind. And you rationalize those cognitive distortions by letting them go and replacing them with what seems to be the truth or what seems to be the reality of the situation, by becoming less emotional about it and bringing in a more insightful perspective to the memory or the situation or whatever it is. That's the rational aspect of it. And by doing this, you are essentially practicing the 6 R's, whether you know it or not, because you're recognizing the distortion, or you're recognizing the painful memory, or you're recognizing the hindrance. You're letting it go, you're relaxing it, you're replacing continuing it with loving kindness or whatever the wholesome state of mind is. So there is some overlap in that sense. But I do want to caution people to say that, meditation should not be seen as a end-all, be-all cure for everything. It has its purpose. And the purpose of it is to gain insight that liberates you from your your bondage, let's say, to samsara. I mean, for all intents and purposes, if we're very blunt about this, the Buddha talked about samsara as being this prison. Like, we don't want to continue to be here anymore because it is painful, it is suffering. So we are using liberating insight, as it were, by this process of right effort, right mindfulness, right collectedness, so that through that, we can experience complete freedom. And when we have complete freedom of mind, from suffering, we are able to act spontaneously. We are no longer acting conditioned by our past projections. That is the great benefit of any practice rooted in the Dhamma. That allows you to see and allows you to let go and allows you to then replace it with something else. So there might be some overlap in certain therapies. But again, we should not say that they are one and the same. They each have their own uses. They can be complementary to each other, but doesn't mean that they need to be used in tandem all of the time.
Okay, thank you. Maureen.
Hi. I love this topic. I'm engaged in forgiveness practice right now, and I have done it before, and that's why I'm doing it again. The first time was a few years ago, and the issue came up while I was on a retreat, and I was deep in meditation, and something very painful came up in the person. It, blew me away, but I had guidance from my teacher, and he directed me to this specific practice because it was so old and had been with me for so long. It took a few months, and it had to do with a parent who abused me, who was also an alcoholic. At the end, it was about 4 months, 5 months that I did this every day. And at the end of it, all I had was compassion for that man. He wasn't even my parent anymore. He was just another being who suffered. And it changed, it really changed a lot of my life to have that removed. And now I'm engaged in another practice of meditation with a friend, and we had a different view of a particular situation. And this time I'm having a harder time getting to the other person. I'm forgiving myself, what comes up while I'm doing the forgiveness. I do this daily, the 30 minutes. But I'm just having a hard time. I know it will occur. I just have to be patient. But the other person is not coming up. I'm the few other times I've done it, comes up, and then I start to see them, and they soften. So I soften. And actually, I don't even know if I'm asking for your input, though I would love it, but I trust the experience because it's worked for me before. And I've never cried, though I've softened and softened and softened. And for me, the forgiveness then kind of turns into metta. At some point, it just starts to transition to metta rather than it's just a wonderful practice. Takes a lot of patience for me to just wait, to trust. So I just wanted to add that my experience has changed my life with the forgiveness meditation. So thank you. And thanks for having this talk, especially it's so serendipitous for me.
Okay, thank you. Delson, were you going to address that, the demanding?
Yeah, I just want to point out what you said, which is very important to see, which is that forgiveness does invariably lead to compassion. Because that's the greatest understanding that you have, is that person is suffering. It has nothing to do with you personally, although you were, not you specifically, but anybody who is a receiver of that pain and that suffering, ultimately you transcend that through compassion. Doesn't mean you condone what they did, doesn't mean you agree with what they did, but you realize that person, was just not of right action. They were not understanding themselves, and they had suffering. And so seeing that and having compassion really is a great fruit of forgiveness. And I've seen that a lot with people, is that it invariably does change to metta. It invariably does change to compassion. And that's a step in the right direction. That's one of the ultimate fruits of this practice. So thank you for sharing.
Okay, one thing I wanted to add was that you don't want to demand people come up. If they come up, they come up. If they don't, forget it. Move on. Just open the space. Let whoever comes in come in, because maybe that's not really the person you have to forgive. Your mind knows who it is, and just open the window and let them come in. So don't control. Yeah. Yvonne.
Hi, Delson. Thank you so much for this talk. I think I was badly in need. I just want to tell a little bit about my experience with the 6Rs. It is a new thing for me, really new. I started doing it because, I said, no, I'm putting out all the other practice that I was doing was concentration. And I was quite surprised. I was so, I would say, successful, I was not expecting, because in the beginning, I could not feel loving kindness. But then, I start doing it, follow the instructions, Bhante gave, and you gave. But then when I don't know which jhana, if it was third, second, third, it was all those steps going that I never felt before. And then when it was about to when I start to be like equanimous, calm, then this feeling of sadness, as if my heart, was on the left side. The right side was okay, was happy, but the left side, there was this pain. And I tried to, it would go, and then it would come back. It'd go, and then when it would go, and then the mind would settle calmly and silent and, very peaceful. But then the pain on the left side came up again, and I 6R. And I thought of this forgiveness, but I didn't know how to do it. I never did it, never heard it, And now, can you just give me a little bit of instructions when it happens in a meditation, that you go, and then at a certain point you stop, and then this kind of pain, it is something painful, And I think what it is, is that something that I regret doing when my son was really young. I didn't know how to do, how to deal with him. I think so, this is one thing that comes up.
Yeah. So in this case, I would say it's not important for you to continue with the same practice and then experience that equanimity and then that sadness again. Rather, you just keep that practice aside for the time being and just do forgiveness practice in earnest. So in this case, the instructions I gave were very simple, which is you start off with just saying these statements, I forgive myself for not understanding, and you just wait. And as David just said a little earlier, which is you don't control the process by directing it towards something, whether it was something to do with you and your son or whatever the situation might have been. Try not to bring it up on your own. Let it come up automatically, if that is the situation. And so if it is, then you just allow it to be there, and you say, I forgive myself, or I forgive this person, whatever it is, and you feel that regret starting to melt away. You don't try to make it go away, but you will feel it as you start to come to a deeper level of acceptance that it happened. And now I can move on. I can let it go and I can move on. So, the short instructions, I think, David, are also on the website, on the Dhamma Sukha library page. So I don't know if somebody wants to link it to the chat or if it's there.
We put it in there, yeah.
So just set aside the regular practice you're doing now and just do forgiveness for a little while until that sadness, that guilt melts away.
And when you were giving instruction, I tried to do it together, along with you. And I felt like crying, but then I stopped it because I want to listen to you. Yeah. And then when it happens, what do you do?
When you want to cry?
No, but you just cry and that's it?
And that's it. It feels so good. you shouldn't underestimate the power of a good cry also. It's an amazing release. Really, try it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Must be. Yeah, because I didn't go on, you know. So I don't know what would be, you know, the end of the crying.
You will find a lot of relief. Trust me, you will see a lot of relief. It's like as if you've just dropped a heavy load from your shoulders. It will
Okay.
be, yes.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay. You know, it occurs to me that crying perhaps is a natural way to let go of emotional stuff instead of bottling it up. I mean, it's built in. It's like nothing wrong with crying. It's just it lets go of stuff. It's healthy, you know.
It's healthy, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Alex,
You know, there was
oh yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
I mean, this is completely off topic, but I'll talk about it anyway. It's, you know, there's that guy Osho. I don't know how many of you know him, but he was also by the name of Rajneesh, and he had a very interesting practice, a very interesting meditation that he would do. I'm not endorsing it, but I'm just explaining what the whole process is. Maybe you'll get some insights into it. It was called the Mystic Rose Meditation. Very interesting meditation. And it was a 3-week program where for 1 week, every day for 3 days, all you would do is you would laugh. You would try to bring yourself to some kind of laughter. Think about something funny, try to, you know, imagine something funny, and just keep laughing for those 3 hours as best as you can. And then the next week, all you would do is you would cry and you would release all of this emotional baggage. So in the beginning, you'd feel all of this childlike joy, and then you'd go deeper and you experience the grief, and you would take it out from the process of crying. And then the third week was just a week of silence. So 3 hours every day you would be in silence, just observing things as they are. So the benefits of a good laugh, the benefits of like a hearty belly laughter, you know, should not be underestimated, nor should a good cry, you know. So that is why even Bhante would always emphasize, like, make sure you have a good time, make sure you enjoy yourself, stop taking things personally, stop taking them so seriously. You know, if you laugh at the craziness of your mind and what comes up, you will start to come into a level of awareness where you don't take it personal anymore. You realize, oh, it's just the mind. Yeah, so laughter is very important, crying is very important, and silence, which is the ultimate fruit of this whole process, where you come into a level of quietude where you can see things as they are. Anyway, let's continue.
Yeah.
Let me address that. Honestly, I have no idea what Bhante was saying or the context behind what Bhante was saying. I can't speak for Bhante. Bhante's long gone. So, you know, if Umberto wants to speak on it, he can. But whatever Bhante said, first of all, we have to understand one thing. Not everything Bhante said was necessarily always accurate. He was only human. Yeah. So if he said something, he might have said it in a larger context around something related to the Dhamma. But I don't think he was necessarily attacking people for their depression or whatever they were experiencing. He might have said it in a different context. What I will say about depression is that it's something that you don't even know you are in necessarily, because it's so deep, because it's so heavy. And depression can manifest in many different ways. You might not even be aware of it sometimes. And the only thing you can do is to try to see in the moment, okay, here is an experience. I'm not experiencing joy. Again, I'm not saying everybody needs to experience joy all the time. In the same way, not everybody needs to be sad all the time or upset all the time. But there is a certain quality to depression that drains the energy, that drains the system. And the only way to start to let that go is by using certain kinds of therapies, if that helps. Meditation doesn't need to be the cure to depression. I don't accept that, because depression might be a symptom of something that's even deeper, right? So I think a person should see for themselves what seems most appropriate and go in that direction.
Something that just is simply not being understood. Call it ignorance, delusion, whatever. So yeah, thank you for that. So I just wanted to unpack it.
Yeah. I'll just say one more thing, which is, and this doesn't need a response, but it's just a comment on what you mentioned, which is compassion. I mean, that is really the mindset of somebody fully awakened. Compassion and wisdom. These are the two wings upon which the mind of somebody who is fully awakened exist, let's say, or function. And compassion doesn't try to analyze, doesn't try to investigate. It's just compassion for the sake of being compassionate. Doesn't even try to solve the other person's problems. Doesn't try to be a savior. Doesn't try to say, I feel bad for you and I want to help you by taking you out of that situation. No, it doesn't do that either. It's just a recognition of the other person's suffering and having true empathy, understanding for that person's situation, and being available. You can just be there as a presence. Some people just want to be heard. Majority of people just want to be heard and recognized. And doing that in itself is compassion. That's compassionate action. We don't always have to try to take on other people's problems. We don't always have to try to say, hey, if you thought about it this way, or maybe you should go this way, or whatever. No. Sometimes it helps to just be there and they just unload whatever's going on and they feel better that way. And by us being compassionate, we don't take that. Whatever they're saying is their stuff. We understand that. We recognize it's their suffering, and we're allowing ourselves to be an open vessel. But okay, fine. Say what you need to say to me. I'm here. I'm lending you my full attention. Please go ahead. And that's sometimes all that's needed.
Perfect. I think sometimes people just want us to listen, and don't tell us what to do. Just listen, and that's it. And it's enough. And then they hear themselves and they figure it out.
Yeah. There you go.
Daniela.
Okay. I'm listening, and thank you very much for being here. And I'm saying hello to Anne and to John, who I know from Kin's Sunday meetings. When you are in a situation where family continues to sort of goad you and upset you, and you have compassion for people who are intentionally setting you up, can you continue to be compassionate when, instead of confronting, continue to be compassionate to people who are continually trying to set you up for a reaction? And the reaction is hurtful. Like, their intentions are hurtful. And you know that it's intentional. It's not an accident. It's not ignorant. It's intentionally picking on something that would hurt you, and they do it in a good way, and it's effective. Do you continue to be compassionate? Because it's family, I don't want to drop them, but it's really hard to continue to be abused intentionally every time. Do you understand?
Yeah. I understand. Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying. And what I would say to that is, first we have to understand this from a karmic perspective, which is that what people say to us to instigate or to create a reaction out of us is their karma. It's their active karma, whatever they're doing. And how we choose to respond to that is our karma. So it shouldn't be about the other person. We don't want to give power to the other person, so to speak, control to the other person through our reactions. So being non-reactive, easier said than done. I know, easier said than done. But coming from a place of non-reactivity is very beneficial. And sometimes all that requires is not compassion. It's not compassion at all. It's, yes, for a level, for a certain level, it's like, okay, I understand that they're suffering and that's all them, that's all their problem. But now what you have to instill in your mind is equanimity. Yeah.
Okay. Coming back full circle to why I initiated meditation in my life in the first place. Thank you, Delson. Thank you very much.
Okay, great. Anything else from anyone?
Are there any questions in the chat?
No, just bunches of comments here and there. So,
hello, hi, Delson. So good to see you. I'm so happy. So the forgiveness meditation, you would not mix it then. You would not like say in the morning you do half an hour of forgiveness, and then in the afternoon you go to the normal meditation. You would just stick to it. Is it so? And then would it be helpful to, like, rather than one time, do it longer, do it 3 times, half an hour or so?
Yeah. So yes, this is a good point. I would not mix practices. I would just do forgiveness alone until you're ready to move on completely towards Metta or any other Brahma Vihara. And better to do 20 or 25 minutes of practice 3 times a day or 4 times a day or whatever seems feasible than to do longer periods. Definitely don't want to do more than 30 minutes at a time when it comes to forgiveness practice. Because it just loses steam after that. It just becomes very stale. And it's like you have to force it. Like 25-minute increments are probably the best approach to this.
Okay, thank you very much.
okay, a question from the chat. We forgive something and it's kind of done for a little while, and then a month later it comes back and we forgive it and then it comes back. Well, how do we know when we're done with it?
When there's no more emotional reaction to that memory. There's no more content that causes some feeling of resentment, a feeling of anger, a feeling of hurt from that memory. I'll just say, even in the suttas, the Buddha says, the perfection of loving kindness is that there is no longer even an iota of ill will present in the mind, which means not even a single moment of mind thinking about that person in a resentful or angry way. That's the perfection. That means you have perfected loving kindness. Likewise with compassion, likewise with joy and equanimity. So with forgiveness, in the same way, you're done with that situation or that person or that incident or whatever, when there's not even a single iota of resentment, guilt, remorse, or whatever it might be.
Okay, perfect. Kashmira.
Thank you for your talk, Delson. I really, really appreciate it. I have a question where sometimes I do not understand the tightness in my system or in my body. Like, let's say there is a lump in my throat or somewhere. Is it because of an unresolved issue in the past? Because I really don't have, I cannot say I have an emotional thing. All I know that this is something that is I feel right now, but is it because of an unresolved past issue, or is it really my body just not physical condition? So how do you, can you help how we navigate through something like that?
Yeah, I think it's better that you check if it's a physical condition or not first. And I'm saying this specifically to you because we've had this discussion before in past retreats, so it might warrant you to actually check if it's a physical thing before we further investigate if there's an emotional or mental quality to that thing.
Yeah, just to follow up on that, is that in my last retreat, what happened was after doing, it was not a forgiveness practice, just the usual, of jhana practice. After sometimes, after coming out of a sit, my body feels like all the pain has just disappeared. And so I wonder if the same thing happens when you do forgiveness, or is it just that jhanas help release such good, all of your right kind of hormones and balance your system so you feel good? I don't know. Seems like both work to me.
Maybe it was giving you temporary relief because, we've heard stories in suttas where the Buddha had excruciating back pain and he'd go into the fourth jhana for temporary relief from that. So maybe that's what it was. But in any case, I think it might warrant you to just check if it's not some kind of a physical situation.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Okay, Yvonne.
Just coming back to this other meditation that you talk about, Brahma Viharas, not that I want to start doing it, all the other ones, but are they in the Dhamma Sukha site?
Yes, they are. You would probably want to, when you're ready to do like a online retreat or something, just look at the website and you'll see what retreats are available for Brahma Viharas or for forgiveness.
Yeah, okay. Okay. Yeah, okay, thank you.
Yeah, we have retreats going on all the time, so feel free to sign up.
Okay, I'll have a look.
All right. Okay, I think, have we come to the end of questions now? Looks that way. Looks like we're going to be sharing some merit here.
All right.
All right.
May suffering ones be suffering free and the fear struck fearless be. May the grieving shed all grief and may all beings find relief. May all beings share this merit that we have thus acquired for the acquisition of all kinds of happiness. May beings inhabiting space and earth, devas and nagas of mighty power, share this merit of ours. May they long protect the Buddha's dispensation. Sadhu,
sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
All right. I will see you guys when I see you, whenever that will be.
All right. Thank you very much. For another
Thanks for coming,
talk.
everyone.
Thank you
very much.
Take care.
Thank you, Delson.
Thank you.
Thank you, Delson.
Thank you, Delson.
Very
Thank
tough.
you.
Thank you so much, Delson.
Thank you, Delson.
You.